The rain had started as a whisper at dawn, but by afternoon it was a relentless roar that drowned out the world. The wind screamed through the palm trees, bending their thin trunks like reeds. In the small coastal town of Lucia, the floodwaters were already waist-deep. Miguel Salcedo stood on the roof of his cousin's house, scanning the submerged street below. The water shimmered with oil, plastic, and the occasional body of a drowned pig from the nearby farms. His cousin, Rena, wrapped herself in a soaked blanket, teeth chattering. "They said on the radio the rescue boats can't reach us till morning," she muttered. "We won't make it if we stay here," Miguel said, his voice flat. "The dam upstream is close to breaking." Rena's eyes widened. "That's 30 kilometers away." "I worked there last year," Miguel said. "If the old spillway gives way, the whole valley goes under. We need high ground." The third person on the roof, a quiet teenager named Noel, stared at the distance where flashes of lightning revealed the dark outline of the mountains. "There's an old church on the ridge," he said. "The one with the stone bell tower. My grandfather told me it survived every typhoon." They hesitated. The church was nearly 4 kilometers inland, through streets that were now rivers. But Miguel nodded. "Pack light. We move now." They tied together lengths of wire and rope, scavenged from the roof, and descended into the murky water. The stench was overwhelming: rotting food, sewage, and gasoline. Rena gagged, clutching Miguel's shoulder. As they waded through the current, something brushed against Miguel's leg. He turned sharply, flashlight beam cutting through the brown water. Nothing. But the feeling stayed with him, the sense that the flood concealed not just debris, but something alive, watching them move. They reached a narrow alley where the current calmed slightly. A jeepney was half submerged, its roof glinting under the flashlight. The door hung open. "We can rest there," Rena said. They climbed inside. The seats were slick, the air thick with mildew. On the ceiling, scratched into the metal, were words barely visible in the flickering light. "Do not go to the church." Rena frowned. Who would write that? Noel stared at it for a long time, his expression unreadable. "My Lolo used to say the church was cursed. That after the war, people went there to hide from the Japanese. None of them came out." A low rumble echoed through the valley, deep and distant, like thunder but heavier. Miguel's heart sank. "That's not thunder," he said. "That's the dam." They scrambled out into the downpour. The water was rising fast, pulling at their legs. Somewhere in the black distance, a siren began to wail, distorted by the storm. "Run!" Miguel shouted. They fought through the deluge toward the hills. Behind them, the lowlands of Lucia disappeared beneath the surge, and as lightning split the sky, Miguel looked back once, and thought he saw figures moving against the current. Not people struggling, but standing, half submerged, faces pale, unmoving as the flood swallowed the town whole. By midnight, they reached the base of the ridge. The rain had softened, though the wind still lashed at their soaked clothes. The church loomed above them, ancient, built from dark volcanic stone. Its bell tower tilted slightly, draped in vines. Rena collapsed onto the steps. "We made it." Miguel turned his flashlight on the entrance. The heavy wooden doors stood ajar. Inside was pitch darkness. "Let's see if we can find candles," he said. They entered cautiously. The air inside was dry, musty. Their footsteps echoed against the stone floor. Statues of saints lined the walls, many cracked or headless. At the altar, a faded painting of the crucifixion hung askew, the Christ figure's eyes seeming to follow them. Noel found a box of half-melted candles and lit one. The flame flickered weakly. "There's a crypt below," he said. "I remember Lolo telling me they buried people here after the typhoon of '67. "Let's stay upstairs," Rena said quickly. "I don't want to go near the dead." They settled by the altar, wrapped in old choir robes for warmth. The rain pounded against the stained glass windows. For a while, there was only the sound of wind and water. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Miguel stiffened. He raised the flashlight. Noel. The boy was sitting beside Rena, staring into the candle flame. What? The footsteps came again, this time closer, from the back of the church. Miguel stood, gripping a broken pew leg as a weapon. The beam of his light swept across the pews, catching movement, just for a moment, a shadow slipping behind a column. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. He moved closer, the light trembling in his hand. The air had grown colder. A faint smell of rot drifted from the rear door leading down to the crypt. Suddenly, something slammed against the door from the other side. Rena screamed. The candle went out. Miguel's flashlight flickered, then died. For a few seconds, there was only darkness and the sound of their ragged breathing. Then, a whisper, low, wet, right beside Miguel's ear. "Don't open it." He swung the flashlight up again, hammering the side until it flickered back to life. The door was still closed. No one stood near him. Rena clutched his arm. "Miguel, what did it say?" He didn't answer, because he wasn't sure if he'd heard it out loud, or inside his head. By dawn, the storm had calmed. Mist clung to the mountains, and a pale light filtered through the cracked stained glass. Rena had fallen asleep against the wall. Noel was gone. Miguel shot up, calling his name. No response. He found footprints near the altar, muddy, small, leading toward the crypt door. "Damn it, Noel." He pushed the heavy door open. A spiral staircase led down into darkness. The air was damp and smelled of iron. He followed the steps, calling again. Halfway down, he heard a voice. "Miguel, come see." The words echoed strangely, as if spoken into a tunnel. He descended into a narrow chamber lined with stone niches. Old coffins lay stacked along the walls. In the center of the room stood Noel, his candle flickering beside an open coffin. "Why are you down here?" Miguel snapped. Noel turned slowly. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused. "They weren't buried right," he said softly. "They're still waiting." Miguel felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Who's waiting?" Before Noel could answer, the ground shuddered. Water began seeping through the cracks in the stone floor. The flood had reached even this far uphill. "Move!" Miguel grabbed the boy's arm, dragging him toward the stairs. But as they climbed, a voice rose from below, a chorus of whispers, dozens of them, layered and hollow. "Stay with us." Rena appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale. "Miguel, what's happening?" The water surged up the stairwell. In it floated fragments of wood and something else, bone-white, human-shaped. They slammed the door shut and pushed a pew against it. The whispers faded, muffled. Noel trembled. They were the ones who hid here during the war. The soldiers trapped them inside. Miguel looked at him sharply. "How do you know that?" "I remember," Noel said, his voice distant. "I dreamed it. Or maybe it was them showing me." Miguel didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't want to. But when he looked into Noel's eyes, he saw something there. Something old, something that didn't belong to a 15-year-old boy. 2 days later, The rescue helicopters arrived. The flood had receded, leaving behind a landscape of ruin. Lucia was gone, buried under silt and debris. Miguel sat on the church steps, wrapped in a rescue blanket. Rena was beside him, silent. Noel stood a few meters away, staring out over the valley. A soldier approached. "We didn't expect anyone to survive this high up," he said. "You're lucky." Most of the ridge was underwater. Miguel glanced at Noel. "We made it just in time." The soldier nodded. "Funny thing, though. Locals say no one's used that church in decades. Said it was sealed off after the landslide in '67. Miguel frowned. "That can't be right." The doors were open. The soldier gave him a puzzled look. "There are no doors anymore, sir. The whole front collapsed years ago." Miguel turned to the church. The facade was cracked, half buried in mud, but the doors were gone, just gaping stone. He looked at Rena. She shook her head slowly. Noel was still standing by the ridge. The boy hadn't spoken since they'd left the crypt. His clothes were dry, though no one had seen him change. "Noel," Miguel called. The boy turned. For a moment, Miguel thought he saw water glistening under his skin, tiny beads forming at his hairline, sliding down his cheek. Then Noel smiled faintly. "They're quiet now." Before Miguel could speak, the boy walked toward the trees and vanished into the mist. The rescuers searched for hours, but they never found him. Days later, when the floodwaters finally drained and the crypt was unearthed, one coffin lay open. Inside was a skeleton the size of a grown man, and beside it a smaller one, its bones arranged neatly, hands clasped in prayer. Miguel didn't tell anyone what he saw that night in the church. But sometimes, when the rain returns and the valley floods again, locals swear they hear church bells ringing from the drowned hills. They say it's the boy calling the water back.